I'm John Whitfield. I'm a member of the firm of Whitfield, Bryson and Mason, and I've been riding motorcycles my whole life. I've also had the privilege of helping people that are the victims of motorcycle accidents. I always get questions when somebody comes into my office asking about their motorcycle case as to what the case is worth. They always want to know that at the very beginning. So let me give you some ideas and some tips as to what a motorcycle case might be worth and how I evaluate a motorcycle case. There are three things I'm looking for when I determine the value of a motorcycle case. The first is what we call liability. Did some other person that hit you while you're riding your bike make a mistake? Were they negligent? Were they reckless? Did they do something that was a violation of the law? Were they liable? That is the primary issue when I try to determine the value of a motorcycle case, and there is a whole host of things that I'm looking at to make that determination. The first thing I look at is my client itself. Did my client have a helmet on that particular day? Because if my client didn't have a helmet on, they're essentially asking for trouble. When you go down on a bike, nothing good happens. The best thing that happens to you is road rash. The worst thing, obviously, is death. And whether or not you have a helmet on is extremely important in my analysis to try to determine the value of your case. The second thing I'm looking at is, was my client inebriated in some way or impaired? Stopping times and the ability to ride your bike appropriately is all turns on whether or not you have your faculties when you're riding your bike. If you've had a couple of beers, if you've had some things that you're not supposed to have, and it affects your ability to react appropriately, that plays into the value of the case. The next thing I'm worried about as far as my client is concerned is whether or not he's got insurance. Does he have appropriate insurance to cover the injuries that he may sustain while he or she is riding the bike? So the first thing I'm trying to determine when it comes to liability is I'm trying to determine what my client did or didn't do. Sometimes I have situations where my client might have been speeding. Sometimes I have situations where my client was doing things on the bike he shouldn't be doing. All those things are extremely relevant. The next thing I'm trying to figure out in terms of liability is what the other party was doing. Did they run a red light? Did they violate the law? Were they impaired in some way when they ran into my client and caused injury? Those things are all important. And so I have to make that determination first as to who was at fault. Was it my client or the other side? A very good way of determining that early on is getting a copy of the police report, because more often than not, the policeman will determine in the police report itself who was at fault. Sometimes those reports are incorrect, but more often than not, they're correct. So, liability. Did somebody make a mistake? Was somebody negligent that caused injury to the rider on the motorcycle? The second thing I'm looking at when I'm trying to evaluate a motorcycle personal injury case is, what are the damages? Damages are a fancy word for injuries. How bad were the injuries? Was it road rash? Was it a broken bone? Was it burns? Was it death? I need to know that. And I can determine that based upon the police report, the interviews with my client, or the interviews with the family members. All those things can tell me the extent of the injuries. I also have to determine the medical bills, and I have to look at the medical records to determine exactly what injuries my client sustained. So, liability first, who's at fault? Secondly, what are the injuries? The third thing and final thing I'm trying to determine to value a personal injury motorcycle case is whether or not there is an ability to collect. Insurance is directly attributable to this, and I need to know how much insurance coverage my client has, because in some instances, my client, the motorcycle rider himself, has insurance monies available to him in a motorcycle accident. And then I also need to know the insurance coverages for the person that caused the wreck. That's very important, because if there is no insurance, 9 times out of 10, there's a very small chance of recovery. So those three things are the things I'm looking for, or any competent personal injury motorcycle lawyer is looking for to value the case: liability, damages, and the ability to collect. I hope this video has helped you determine how to value a motorcycle personal injury case. These cases are highly technical, and should you think you have a motorcycle case, make sure you hire a lawyer that's got experience in not only riding a bike, but also prosecuting motorcycle type cases. If you have further questions, make sure you post them in the comments below. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact our office in Nashville, 615-921-6500.